You wrote a column, and I remember gnashing my teeth when I read it, which says very much the same thing that I say towards the end of Doom about the protests of 2020 following the killing of George Floyd, that they had a religious character. And there were medieval undertones. I say this not to invite instant cancellation by Black Lives Matter, but merely to point out that much of what was happening in the hundreds of locations in the US where protests took place had an explicitly religious character. For example, the groups of white protesters washing the feet of two black pastors in one location, the people who had fake whip stripes on their back, I assume they were fake and made up. There's a lot of religious language of atonement and expiation in those protests, which were mostly by white people. I came across one man offering a prayer up, seeking forgiveness for past acts of racism. So I don't think one can ignore the religious undertone, if you like, of those protests, nor as an historian could one really look away from the non sequitur quality of having a huge nationwide protest about the issue of police violence towards African Americans in the midst of a pandemic. And even although there wasn't much outdoor spread happening with this particular virus, it was still a little odd, really, to have mass gatherings at that particular moment. So I felt there were echoes of the 14th century and of ancient times, and perhaps also of 1918-19 in what went on last year. And I know you thought that because you wrote it. And it's bloody annoying when you've written a book and some bugger goes on to Substack and, basically scoops you. But
I'm sure you'll get over it. Yes. Yeah, I was, and also it's hard not to see, even though this is complicated, the Black Death also did deeply undermine the religious authorities of the time. I mean, their ability to ward off evil, all the things that they said would prevent you from getting this was. I mean, there was a lot of other things that the church was becoming less popular in many respects, but there was a kind of definitely a resurgence of personal religion and a kind of which can be seen, and again, I'm not in favor of these simple causal explanations, but definitely you could look back and see the Reformation beginning, some of these ideas beginning to spread. The difference also then and now is that then you had this printing press which was starting, and now you're all locked inside, which normally would mean a pretty quiescent population because you've got them under house arrest essentially. But the internet provides actually a whole new arena for people to live on by themselves, and of course in these self-selected groups that happen online. And so you also have the possibility of a lockdown creating actually a very online populace that is much more susceptible to outbreaks of emotion and of frustration and of long-held resentment just exploding all at once. And it does look, to me at least, that it may be a permanent effect, that the levels of crime and murder in some of the major cities, now it's not totally correlated with where they had these demonstrations, but it's not completely different than those, that we seem to have gone to a whole new different level of toleration of criminality in our major cities that will have, obviously, I think, some serious political impacts. And culturally, too, it does seem as if that psychological experience of plague allowed people to reimagine the entire world. Once you suspend people of their normal, everyday, quotidian lives, you kind of force people to think, well, what am I doing? And now when I don't know whether you were shocked by the unemployment data, but I kind of wonder, well, have people kind of also reimagined work and started looking at that in a different way? Why were we fucking working every fucking day, killing ourselves, Americans? Maybe this helps us understand we need to take a little bit more time for ourselves, even at the expense maybe of wealth.